Sunlight. It is the source of all energy and life on this earth. And rain. It brings us vital nutrients and water to help us live. Do you think it's possible to have too much of either? Well, Team Magma and Team Aqua don't. Team Magma and Team Aqua are Game Freak's first stab at a Pokemon villainous team that aren't just Team Rocket. You know, they're not just the standard gangster type. One is hellbent on expanding the landmass at the expense of the seas, and the other is hellbent on the expansion of the sea at the expense of the landmass. Gripping, I know, but just hang with me. I'm Flyboy, and you're watching the third installment of my videos about the villainous teams of Pokemon. Each episode of this series will serve as a deep dive into each of the villainous teams of the several Pokemon games, after which I will give my review on each villainous team and rate them on 4 different metrics. Following that, I'm going to put them on my villainous teams tier list, and we will be able to see by the end of the series who I think is the best villainous team, the worst, and every single one in between. You can watch the previous episodes of this series by clicking that tag up in the top right corner. But in this episode, we're going to be talking about the lovable dorks of the Hoenn region, Team Magma and Team Aqua. These villainous teams serve as the main antagonists of 5 different Pokemon games, those being the Generation 3 games, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, and the Generation 6 Pokemon games, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And don't let the title or thumbnail fool you, Pokemon Emerald is my favorite Pokemon game in the whole franchise. And Hoenn is my favorite region. But these guys, Team Magma and Team Aqua, are just absurd, okay? The costumes, their plot, everything is just the definition of absurd, but I love it. Does that mean they'll be a good villain on my tier list? Well, that's what this video's for. With that out of the way, let us introduce everyone's favorite eco-terrorists, Team Magma and Team Aqua. So, Team Aqua, they're your average Portlandian environmentalist, tree huggers, however you want to put it, LARPing as pirates. Okay, I know that's a very reductionist definition of this team, so who are these aquatic animal rights activists? In Generation 3, it's this group of, they're kind of like pirates, but their motive is pretty simple. They love the sea, they see life comes from the sea, and so they want more of it. In Generation 6, however, their motivations are a lot deeper. They want to use Primal Reversion with Kyogre to flood the Earth and reset it to a point where humans don't exist. So yeah, the Generation 6 remakes, they definitely tweak the motives, and it's a lot more hardcore, you could say. Following suit with their aquatic theme, their outfits in both generations of games sort of follow this pirate theme. Now, Team Magma, on the contrary to Team Aqua, are a little more grounded in their motivations. In Generation 3, they have a very similar motivation to Team Aqua. They see land as the source of all human development, and they want more human development, so they want more land. Okay, Game Freak wasn't really sending their best riders in 2002, okay, just give them a break, okay? But in Generation 6, however, they want to awaken Primal Groudon. And with that power, they want to also flood the Earth, I guess dry it up, to reset the Earth to a point where there's no Pokemon, so humans can develop further. You can see this sort of balance between Pokemon and humans that these teams want to disrupt, which we get something very similar with Team Plasma in the Generation 5 games. Now, the design philosophy for Team Magma is a little unorthodox. In the Generation 6 games, they lean more into like a mad scientist, very organized group. But in both, they're wearing hoods with little horns on them. And so, you know, one even points out, and we'll get to that in the plot summary, how ridiculous it kind of looks. But, you know, they're red, they've got this volcano vibe. And maybe the horns are supposed to, like, represent, like, sort of a demonic element because they're in volcanoes and the lakes of fire and all that. So, I don't know. It gives off a volcano-y vibe, which, you know, that works fine enough. So, without further ado, let's journey into Hoenn and go over the plot summary of Pokemon Emerald and a little bit of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire as well. By the way, getting the footage for Oras was a slog. I forgot how slow 3D Pokemon games were, but I digress. Okay, let's get into it. Chapter 1, the Devon Goods. In fashion with the other villainous teams of the Pokemon franchise, the first interaction with these guys is very low stakes. In Petalburg Woods, you find this person who's a worker for the Devon Corporation, which is kind of like the Hoenn region's Silphco. He's in distress, a Team Aqua grunt approaches you, and he wants the papers that this Devon worker has. You thwart this grunt with his level 9 Poochyena, and after you defeat the first gym leader, Roxanne, you come out to see him stealing something from the Devon Corporation. Fortunately, the tunnel he runs into is blocked off, and so you corner him, defeat him, and return those stolen goods back to the Devon Corporation. You are then asked by its owner to deliver a letter to his son, but then also deliver those goods that were about to be stolen to a person named Captain Stern. This takes you to Slateport City, where when you look for Captain Stern, he's not in the dock where he usually is, and the worker there tells you to go see him at the Oceanic Museum. Now, if you check out this museum before you go to the shipyard, you find a bunch of grunts lined up in front of it. You also have some blocking off Route 110, and obviously they're up to no good. After you enter the museum, you see these Team Aqua grunts populating the whole museum, and once you go up to meet Captain Stern on the second floor, 2 of them approach you. It seemed like their intention here was to intercept the Devon Goods and maybe learn a bit more about oceanic undersea travel. The importance of these goods is that after we deliver them to Captain Stern, he says he's the lead of an undersea exploration team, and these goods were sort of the finishing touches that his submarine needed. This alludes to Team Aqua's ultimate goal, which is to find Kyogre, who is sealed away in the seafloor cavern way underneath the ocean. Now, after you defeat the grunts and before Captain Stern leaves to start his expedition, you are introduced to Archie. He announces his motivation to expand the seas, and when he explains why, he says all life comes from the sea, and so it would be better if we had more of it. He then leaves with his crew. You don't get to battle Archie yet, but this is the end of the first chapter. In Pokemon Ruby and Omega Ruby, it is actually Team Magma who's after the Devon Goods in this subplot. And it still does make sense because in those games, Groudon is still the one sealed underneath the seafloor cavern. In Emerald, though, we know Groudon's in Mount Chimney, which I find is a lot more fitting. In the remakes, however, in Petalburg Woods, they introduce a new character. This character is Zinnia, and she is infiltrating Team Aqua or Team Magma, depending on which game you're playing, and she is a lot more important later in the post-game. Also, this is where the motivations of Archie and Maxie are more developed upon in the remakes. Instead of just their love for the sea or their love for the land, really they go into depth about how they want to reset the world. And they want to not just expand the land, from Maxie's case, but increase human development and reset the world to where it's only humans. Meanwhile, for Team Aqua, they don't just want to make the sea bigger, they want to flood the earth Genesis style and restart fresh with a world just inhabited by Pokemon. Chapter 2, the Meteorite. In Pokemon Emerald, this begins the first major plot involving Team Magma. After you make your way through Fiery Path and Route 113 and Fall Arbor Town and Route 114, you find yourself at Meteor Falls. In this cave, Team Magma is taking a meteorite from a professor named Cosmo. Archie and Team Aqua confront Team Magma here, but it's too late. They take off with the meteorite towards Mount Chimney. Archie then fills you in on the motivations of Maxie in Pokemon Emerald. However, in the other games, Maxie would have told you his motivations in the Oceanic Museum. They want to use the meteorite's power to erupt the volcano at Mount Chimney. Of course, this eruption would cause lava to spurt out, and it would harden by the seas, and it would expand the landmass. And one of the grunts even talks about how she would build her new home on this hardened lava. However, there seems to be an ulterior motive here. When you go up to Mount Chimney and talk to the grunts and Tabitha, it becomes clear they want to awaken something. Now, with hindsight, we know this something is Groudon, and so while it seems like they just want to expand the landmass with this eruption, it really seems like they seek to awaken Groudon from its slumber by blowing its home up. When you confront Maxie, he tells you that all human development comes from the land, and so it would be better if we had more of it. If there's something good, having more is better. This mirrors Archie's sentiment with the sea. You then defeat Maxie, and afterward, as you head down the jagged pass, down Mount Chimney, you find a grunt standing in front of this mound. He talks about some secret hideout, and you move on. So in the Sapphire games, it's actually Team Aqua who steals the meteorite and goes up to Mount Chimney, and you might be asking, well, how does that make sense? And I guess they wanted to use the meteorite to stop a potential eruption from Mount Chimney, to sort of freeze it over or cap it off. But, you know, that's how they got Team Aqua involved in a plot involving a volcano. In the remakes, however, it takes a completely different approach to what the meteorite does, what it's used for, and what the volcano is used for. Instead of trying to erupt it or awaken Groudon, because Groudon's not there in Omega Ruby, it seems like they're using the volcano and the meteorite to create keystones for Mega Evolution. And as you go throughout the rest of the game, it seems like they want to use Mega Evolution as a way to invoke a primal reversion in Groudon before they end up just using the orbs. Chapter 3. The Weather Institute. After you go on to defeat Flannery and Norman, you find yourself on Route 119, and there's a line of Team Aqua grunts blocking your path. The Weather Institute is nearby, and Team Aqua has infiltrated it. It seems like they're after some information about weather patterns in general, or more specifically, weather-changing technology, kind of like what they have there with Cast Form. You clear them out of the building, and they catch wind of Team Magma heading towards Mount Pyre. This is where the red and blue orbs are, which will be used to awaken Groudon and Kyogre. In the Ruby titles, it's Team Magma who's here instead. In the remakes, however, there's a little bit more to why Team Magma or Team Aqua is there. The second in command to either Maxie or Archie is looking into the extreme weather patterns that happen because of primal reversion. They seem troubled by the information they gather, that Kyogre would flood the entire Earth and Groudon would turn it into a desolate wasteland. Chapter 4. The Orbs. This is where, in Pokemon Emerald, and honestly Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire too, the story drags on quite a bit. There's only 2 gym leaders left, Tate and Liza, and Wallace or Hoenn, and there's a ton of story to go through still. You make your way up Mount Pyre, and when you get there, you find Team Aqua. They tell you were too late to find Team Magma, and that they had already left. Archie already has the red orb in his possession, and Maxie already took the blue orb. At this rate, all kind of feels hopeless. They have the power to awaken these beasts. You can't really stop them. However, the old lady by the altar points out, what's this magma emblem doing on the floor? I kind of like how in Pokemon, there just always is that little plot element that's like, yeah, the story has to keep going some way or another. In the originals, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, this is where the team leader gets the opposite color orb of the box legendary. So Archie gets the red orb, or Maxie gets the blue orb, and you end up getting the other orb. In the remakes, however, they change it up a bit because they're including primal reversion. So the leaders actually get the color orb of the box legendary. So Maxie gets the red orb, Archie gets the blue orb, and you end up getting the opposite color. And that matters a little bit more at the end. Anyways, back to Emerald. You go to Jagged Pass, where you remember that mound with the Team Magma grunt standing in front of it, alluding to some secret base. And the ground shakes and reacts to your emblem, and you're able to go in. When you go in, you find this cavernous sort of hideout full of mining equipment and Team Magma grunts. A lot of these grunts are super excited for what's about to happen, the awakening of Groudon, but most of them aren't allowed near it. And this sort of implies this hierarchical leadership that Team Magma has. One of the grunts, by the way, points out how ridiculous it is that they're wearing hoods in a volcano, and I find that kind of funny that Game Freak was like self-aware that they were wearing these insulated clothes in a volcano. You get to the end of the hideout and there's Maxie standing in front of Groudon, and he attempts to awaken Groudon with the power of the blue orb. But kindergarten logic tells me Groudon's red, the blue orb's blue, so I don't know if this is gonna work. And kindergarten logic would be correct in this scenario, as Groudon like F's off and is not controlled by Maxie like he thought he would be. Maxie accuses you of sabotage because you're there, and you have been there sabotaging them the whole time, so it kind of makes sense, and you have to defeat him in battle. Afterwards, he still isn't over his hubris, and he says he's going to figure something out, and he leaves. And so this really just feels like a hollow victory, because Maxie didn't give up, Groudon's out in the wild. I really like that it's sort of this constant chase in these games. You're not ever really finishing the job. Fun fact, this Magma hideout and Groudon being in Mount Chimney, which works thematically, it looks good, it makes sense to me, is only in Pokemon Emerald. In every other game, Omega Ruby and Ruby, I guess, Groudon's under the ocean. So, I guess it works, but this makes a lot more sense. Next, you have to go to Slateport City, but the only information you can get to know to go there next is A, you've played the game before, or B, you go to Team Aqua's hideout and talk to the 2 grunts standing guard. One tells you what Archie's doing, but he would never tell you where he's doing it. And one will tell you where Archie is, but he will never tell you what he's doing there. And I love this writing, this sort of Tweedledee and Tweedledum stuff going on. It's got these 2 grunts who are like, I'll let you in on a little bit, and the other one fills you in on the other. I think it's adorable. Regardless, you go to Slateport City, and Captain Stern is announcing his exploration to the seafloor cavern. And Archie ends up stealing the submarine right from under his nose. It feels like the plot to steal the Devon Goods was kind of counterintuitive if they were just going to steal the submarine anyways, but I think it goes into the character of Archie and Team Aqua as a whole. They're kind of just off the cuff, they're ad hoc, they're pirates. They don't have these master plans like Team Magma does, and so I find it fitting regardless. They then ride their submarine to their hideout over by Lily Cove. And in the Ruby games, this is Team Magma stealing the submarine instead. Team Aqua's hideout is very reminiscent of Silphco and Team Rocket's hideouts, with all the warping panels and the Master Ball being there. All of the grunts make it clear as you defeat them that they don't care that they're losing to you, they're just biding time for their leader. You finally see Matt, the Team Aqua admin, and you fight him, but it's too late. Archie already made the preparations to the submarine, and he's off towards Kyogre. Again, I love this feeling of this chase. You're always one step behind, and I just love the writing here. In the Ruby titles, this is where Team Magma's hideout is, instead of the one in Mount Chimney and Pokemon Emerald. And, like I said, it kind of makes sense. Groudon is in the seafloor cavern. It makes sense. In the remakes, they revamped the look of the hideout completely, and I think it looks pretty awesome, especially that sort of main corridor you walk through or surf through. There is a line of dialogue from one of the grunts that I found very interesting that says that Maxie and Archie were actually on the same team at one point. Regardless, the submarine's gone. Next, you have to go to the seafloor cavern. But Pokemon Emerald has a little bit more for us. Now, in the other games, you would just fight the 7th gym leader, get Dive, and continue on with the seafloor cavern plot. However, Pokemon Emerald has a little bit extra for us. Team Magma infiltrates the Space Center in Mozdeep City, and they announce it beforehand. One of the grunts even points out, okay, next time we won't tell you what we're gonna do before we do it. It's just kind of cute, okay? They go there to steal the rocket fuel used for the rocket ships, and they want to launch it into Mount Chimney to just explode it. They're like, since Groudon's gone, we can't control him. There's no need for Mount Chimney anymore. Let's just blow it up and, expand the landmass that way. I love this sort of last-ditch effort feel it has. It's such a desperate attempt to achieve their goals after everything has collapsed around them. You then get to fight this awesome battle where you team up with Steven and you fight Maxie and Tabitha. And part of me wishes it was Courtney, because you don't get to see Courtney in Pokemon Emerald, but I think it's fine. It's a pretty awesome battle to sort of finish out the Team Magma plot. Maxie, after this, sort of comes to his senses and realizes the wrong he did and is now seeking to change it or atone for it. And, he's a villainous team. There's this redemption arc to him. So that doesn't help him be villainous, but I do like this story they're telling here. I think it helps children realize that, redemption really is for everyone. Now, you get the Dive HM from Steven. You're able to go underwater, and you finally make it to the seafloor cavern. Before you head up into the cavern, you see the submarine that Archie used to get in there, And so you surface and you start going through it. Shelly, one of the Team Aqua admins that you defeat in the seafloor cavern, says that she wants you to join Team Aqua or thought you'd be a good member. And that kind of just reminded me of Ariana from the Heart Gold and Soul Silver games. You get to Archie and you end up fighting him and defeating him before he awakens Kyogre. However, the red orb activates on its own anyways, and it awakens him. And of course, as we know with what happened to Groudon, Kyogre F's off and isn't controlled by Archie. I find this part very interesting because it contrasts Archie's character with Maxie's. Instead of Maxie, where everything was deliberate. He used the orb deliberately, he fought you afterwards, he made sure no stone was unturned before he ended up fighting you, a child. Archie fights you first, and then when the orb activates, it's not even on his own volition, it does it on its own. So that sort of contrasts Maxie's deliberation with Archie's sort of ad hoc way of doing things. You then get this pretty cool interaction between Maxie and Archie. Maxie comes down and is like, "What are you doing?" And Archie's like, "Don't get high and mighty with me. You awaken Groudon too." And it's just kind of like this cute little interaction between this pirate dude and this like scientist dude. It's pretty cool. You get out of the cavern and you find that not only is the sun blazing down on you and drying stuff up, but also it's raining at the same time very heavily. And this is contrast with the Ruby and Sapphire games, where in Ruby it's just the sunlight and in Sapphire it's just the heavy rain. Maxie, following his character, the more deliberate and strategic thinker, is trying to gather everything together, and he's like telling Archie what to do, and he's like, "We've got to solve this, we've got to do this." And one line of dialogue that he says, which I think is very cool when you contrast it with a line of dialogue later, which I will point out, is that he says, "I know I shouldn't be talking right now, but I just got to do it." And you'll see why I find that very interesting later. Chapter 5, The Legend. Steven flies onto that little sandbar you're standing on and tells you to go towards Sootopolis City, where the Cave of Origin is. Once you get to Sootopolis City, you see the two legendaries, Kyogre and Groudon, dueling it out. And the cutscene looks awesome, but then it like zooms out and Groudon's a little piece of land. But you know, whatever. Groudon's like, I'll give you the handicap this time. The two team leaders, Archie and Maxie, are standing in front of the gym and they're trying to control it. They're desperately like, "Please, Groudon, listen to me," with their wrong colored orbs, duh. And they won't listen. It's all in vain, of course. You finish the whole plot with Rayquaza and Wallace. You get Rayquaza to come down and calm down the legendaries. It's all happy. And then the two team leaders tell you how they want to live a life of restitution. They want to make up for the sins that they committed. They go to Mount Pyre, and when you get up there, they have already returned the orbs, and they're walking down and they walk past you, but Maxie turns around to tell you something. However, he hesitates and refuses to say anything. He just keeps walking. This is the line I think contrasts beautifully with that line that he said on the sandbar outside of the seafloor cavern. Maxie said, "I know I shouldn't be talking, but I have to do this." And he was sort of justifying himself and trying to talk his way out of this giant predicament he got the entire world into. I know I might be reading a little bit too much into this, but this seems like Maxie knew his words meant nothing, and that from now on it would be his actions that define who he is. I don't know. They could have been going for that. Maybe not, but this is my video, and that's what I think they meant by that line of dialogue, or lack of dialogue. In the remakes outside of the Cave of Origin, there is a lot more characterization that happens here. The second in command to the respective villainous leader of whatever game you're playing, whether that be Tabitha or Shelly, is talking to the team leader and saying, "Hey, you need to atone for your sins and fix this." And that's the actual words they use. They say the word sins and they say the word atone. And I think that's pretty awesome, you know, especially for a kid's game nowadays. That was made in 2014. I think it's cool they're using that sort of verbiage to exemplify repentance and restitution. Very cool stuff. Not very villainous, if you ask me, but it's cool nonetheless. Bonus chapter, the Delta episode. Speaking of the remakes, there is a post-game storyline called the Delta episode in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Essentially, there's this weird dragon girl called Zinnia, if you remember, she was infiltrating Team Aqua and Team Magma, who needs to steal all these keystones for Mega Evolution to save the world from this giant meteorite that's about to crash into it. Look, I didn't write it, so that's just the plot. That's how it goes. She uses Rayquaza. There is a Team Magma or Team Aqua subplot involved depending on which version of the game you play. Courtney or Matt, depending on which version of the game you play, end up kind of going haywire after their leaders give up on the vision of their new world. And so they seek out this plan to destroy the world. Earlier in the hideout, you see them talking about this Azoth plan, which is a callback to Pokemon X and Y, where there's this AZ, this man, and this weapon of destruction that could destroy the whole world. So those respective admins end up going to the Maz Deep Space Center and trying to get that technology to do so. You thwart this plan, and Zinnia, the Dragon Girl, steals their keystones, Courtney's or Matt's. She then runs off to the Team Magma or Team Aqua hideout in Lily Cove and steals the team leader's keystones. This doesn't really add a ton for the evil teams in this. They sort of just function as a plot element to Zinnia's story. However, it does show that the admins, Courtney and Matt, were dedicated to their leaders. They were so dedicated to their leaders that if the plan failed, they would just say screw it and blow up the entire planet like out of spite. And that's some real villainy right there. I like to see that. That's some evil. And that's it for the plot summary of both Pokemon Emerald, a little bit of Ruby and Sapphire, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So let's get into the review. What do I think about Team Magma and Team Aqua? Like I said earlier in the video, I will be rating these teams on 4 different metrics on a scale from bad, mid, great, and excellent. And I will be rating Team Magma and Team Aqua together as sort of one, just to not overcomplicate things. So the first metric is their motive. Basically, how compelling are the actions of these teams considering their motives? Does the crime fit the motive, and does the motive fit the crime? If there are loftier goals, higher goals, I would also expect there to be higher stakes and more grand plans to achieve them. For Team Aqua and Team Magma, I am giving them a mid score for their motive. Honestly, if we were just going off Pokemon Emerald, I would have given them like a bad score because their motivations are very shallow compared to like the world-ending consequences that would come from them. Archie just likes the sea and wants more of it, and Maxie just likes the land and wants more of it. Like I said, involving the legendaries with these plots, I feel like would require a little bit more, not just depth, but sort of radicalism to their motivations to justify it. And you know what? That's exactly what Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire do. Like I said earlier in the video, Maxie's like, I want to create a desolate wasteland to destroy all Pokemon habitats so humans can exist on their own and develop. And then Archie's over here like, I want to flood the earth, Genesis style, Noah's Ark stuff, to reset the world to just have Pokemon. Now, these motivations end up with the world-ending consequences of awakening the legendaries. And they're hardcore, they're evil. It's like, whoa, dude, chill. We got a balance here with Pokemon and trainers, and it works out good. Don't tell Team Plasma I said that, but it seems to be working out good. And you just want to, like, explode the planet because you like the sea more than the land. So Oras sort of fixed that up. And so for that, I'm going to give them a mid. I'm going to give them a little bit more to that. These motivations are so much more hardcore than the ones in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And so because of that, I'm going to bump them up a rating. Speaking of being hardcore, how hardcore are these teams when it comes to villainy? The next metric is villainy. How evil are these teams truly? As their sort of genre suggests villainous teams, I expect these teams to be villainous. If the group seems to be more misguided rather than actually just willfully evil, then of course they're not going to really get a good score here. Also, if they don't really commit crimes or do evil stuff, they also can't be considered villainous. However, I would like them to be both willfully evil and doing evil things. If you can just whisk away what they're doing as some sort of misguided hooligans, then I'm sorry, you're not really a good villainous team, are you? Now, for these eco-terrorists, and I said terrorists, so you'd expect a little bit of a higher score, I'm unfortunately going to give them a mid once more. But hear me out, might be a little controversial. Yes, both of these teams literally want to wipe out like half of all of the planet's life forms. But listen, they are redeemed villains. There is a redemption arc for both Archie and Maxie. And so that shows that they weren't 100% dedicated to the cause. Yes, they had these lofty evil motivations and their actions reflected that. However, after they realize everything goes out of control and haywire and they don't have control over their legendaries, they realize quickly they messed up and they don't want this idealized world they thought of in their heads. Furthermore, some of the admins in the remake seemed a little out of the loop on the actual consequences that would come from primal reversion. On the other hand, there were the other admins who would blow up the planet afterwards anyway. So I don't think it's bad. I don't think the villain here is bad. However, I think it is just sort of mid. Where there's a lot of good, where there's a lot of evil, there's also a lot of redemption and a lot of restitution, which, like I said, from a narrative perspective, isn't bad. I like that sort of storyline. It just doesn't tend to a good villain. And yes, they do rob, they do steal, they do take technology. However, like I said, once they get to the end, and that's what all those actions were, all the theft, all the robbery, it was all just a means to an end, which was to awaken the legendary. They realize they're just in it way too deep by the time they get there. And so overall, Team Magma and Team Aqua, and I might get hate for saying this, just seem like a Team Skull if they had a bigger budget, you know, at least when it comes to their motivations. But that's it for this section. This next metric is their plot. How well do these teams fit into the overall story of their respective video games? And further, what does the narrative present? Does it present a pretty cool narrative? Does it present some sort of moral dilemma? And ultimately, how is the pacing of these teams in between gyms? For my honest opinion, I give these guys a great score for their plot. The only knock I really have for Team Magma and Team Aqua is that section of game between the 6th and 8th gym leader. The pacing just grinds to a halt. It's very slow, you know, very sluggish. Even Oras is sluggish without the Mazdeep and Mount Chimney subplots. For the rest of the game, though, it's pretty well spaced out, so I'll give them that. The narrative here I absolutely love, and it's for a different reason than why I love Team Rocket's narrative. The pluses here isn't anything to do with political intrigue. Is the Elite Four involved with this mess? Obviously not for this case. Steven assists you in taking them down. It's something else. It's the morals and the themes that this evil team presents and teaches you that I think is awesome. These are children's games, and so I think good morals should be taught. There's one point in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire where Steven points out just how good the sun is, or how good the rain is, and how awesome they are. Yet the overabundance of it that comes from either Groudon or Kyogre brings a sense of dread. And so it shows this idea that too much of something good could end up being bad. It teaches this idea of prudence and temperance, which I think is wonderful for kids to learn. Overall, I think the best thematic element, however, is the idea of balance and harmony. By the end of all of the games, Archie and Maxie seem to start working together to not only atone for their sins, but make the world a better place. It reminds me of a verse from the Old Testament, Ecclesiastes 3:1. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. It is good for children to learn these ideas, that there is a time and a place for everything, that there is supposed to be balance in this world, and that too much of a good thing could end up being bad. Further, there is a balance to be found between humanity, us as people, and the creatures that God created. Sort of like the Pokemon and the Pokemon world. Does this make them great villains though? Not necessarily. So I'll also knock them for that, but I think the rest just holds together so well, especially with the elements added from the remakes, that I do have to give them a great score here. Moving on, the final metric of my rating system is their aura. And I'm sorry if you hate my opinions, because this is pretty much all this section is. This is the X factor. This is what could shift, you know, a team that sucks, that I absolutely hate, to being one of my favorites. And here might be an example of that. I give Team Aqua and Team Magma great scores for their aura. These pirate/scientist LARPers in their costumes are going to harness the power of some of the legendaries that created this world to expand whatever part of the world they like more. You know what? That's called aura. They rock these weird costumes, but you know what? There's a dress code. These costumes aren't just random. they're deliberate. And I do want to go a lot more into these designs, specifically when compared to the remakes designs, which double down on this idea of pirates and scientists. But I'm going to save that for another video. Just know that I have this weird kind of love for these outfits that they wear. And music does play a part into this. This is where you get these encounter themes and these really cool battle themes, even a unique theme for the leaders, Maxie and Archie, that play when you battle them. And these themes are just so cool. I always loved them growing up. And so that also gives them some aura points for me. Ultimately, these guys, in my opinion, are just really cool. And it's a different cool than Team Rocket. It's not quite the same. Team Rocket's got this sort of mafioso, just cool Yakuza vibes to them. But Team Magma and Team Aqua just bring this sort of... It is kind of anime in the way they do it, but this sort of kind of anime vibe. It's pretty cool. But that's it for my ratings of these teams. Where do I place them on my villainous teams of Pokemon tier list? Well, yeah, it's going to be a C for me, but hey, it's a high C. I think they're better than the Team Rocket in Johto. I think Game Freak just flew a little close to the sun when they were making these motivations. And the inspiration for it is pretty cool, though. I remember hearing it had something to do with environmental politics that were going on in Tokyo during the creation of Ruby and Sapphire, which sort of inspired these motivations. But you know what? Maybe we'll go into that in a different video. Regardless, I want you to stay tuned for the next couple villainous teams, because we are leaving the C rank for a while. The next one's coming up. Pretty awesome, pretty cool. So stay tuned for those ones. Well, that's going to do it for me. Again, I'm Flyboy, and if you liked the video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button down below. And please don't forget to subscribe if you like these videos. Only 5% of the people that watch these videos are actually subscribed. And so if you want to stay updated and actually get notified when I upload, make sure to hit that button and make sure to hit the bell icon next to it as well. Also, don't forget to comment and share this with all the Pokemon fans you know in your life. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one. But until then, peace.